When it looked like the sun wasn't gonna shine anymore, God put a rainbow in the clouds. She does not know her beauty. She thinks her brown body has no glory. If she could dance naked under palm trees and see her image in the river, she would know. But there are no palm trees on the street, and dishwater gives back no images. Still, when it looked like the sun wasn't gonna shine anymore, once riding in old Baltimore, my head was filled, my heart was filled with glee. I saw a Baltimorean keep looking straight at me. Now I was 8 and very small, and she was no whit bigger, and so I smiled. But she stuck out her tongue and called me Nick. She said, "You no good little black Nick." She said, "Dirty no kind Nick." I saw the whole of Baltimore from May until December. And of all the things that happened there, that's all that I remember. Still, when it looked like the sun wasn't gonna shine anymore, Miss Rosie, when I see you, you black, brown, beige, red, yellow, pink, white sack of a woman. When I see you, Miss Rosie, sitting, waiting for your mind like last week's groceries, I say, when I see you, Miss Rosie, in your old man's shoes with the big toes cut out. When I see you, who used to be the prettiest gal in Georgia, used to be called Georgia Rose. When I see you, because of your dedication, your devotion, your courage, and your love, I stand up. Miss Rosie, I stand straight up. And I know when it looked like the sun wasn't going to shine anymore, God put you as light into my shadow. Thank you. I am so grateful to God to be in this loving institution. I am so grateful to God for the leadership of Dr. King. I'm so grateful to God for her being able to be standing up and blessing her church, herself, the place she's standing, and all of her constituents, all of her members, all of the friends of the church, all those who don't even know about the church, but who are blessed because of it. 36 years. I could not that shred from a 19th century gospel song, which I started with, was of course inspired by the statement in Genesis. In Genesis, we are told that rain so persisted that the people became unnerved, frightened. And so, in order to put the people at ease, God put a rainbow in the sky. Well, We know that rainbows and suns and moons and stars and all sorts of illuminations are always in the sky. But clouds can so lower and lower that you can't see the illumination. So in the 19th century, some African American writer, composer, probably a woman, I'm not sure about that, said God put the rainbow not in the sky alone, but in the clouds themselves. Which means that at the worst of times, at the dreariest, meanest, most threatening of times, you can see a possibility of hope. That's what it means. So, because of that, I look at Dr. Barbara King as a rainbow in the clouds. The ways in which she has endeared herself to you and to people around the world. She has endeared herself. She has a place she can go. Anywhere in the world. Amazing. One whole group of people in Ghana gave her a title as Queen Mother. Now these are people who don't speak English as a first language and have seen African Americans generally only when they're sports figures on television or occasionally as entertainers. But to know that there's a woman who God loved enough to make her available to all of us tells me immediately that she has a home to go to. Not just one in the sky, not the one after you reach for that last breath and it doesn't come. Not just that one, but a home in this world. It's amazing. This world so full of fractiousness and anger and bloodthirst and hate and war and rumors of war. Here's a woman who can walk anywhere in the world and people start to bow. Just say thank you. Just thank you. It's such a blessing. So although I'm not at the top of my form physically, nothing would have kept me away from Hillside. So I wanted to talk to you for a few minutes about family. I come from a very small blood family. My mother had 6 brothers and 1 sister, and she's the only one who had children, and she only had 2. My father had 1 brother, and my uncle never had children, and he had 2. I had 1 son, and he had 1. Years ago, when there was a family reunion in Arkansas, 157 people came. We were only 13 related by blood. So that speaks to the ability to make family. And it is no mistake that African American men are called brother, come over here. Bubba. That's just a short for brother. Bud, come over here. It at once says, I'm close enough to you to feel your family-ness with me. I'm close enough to you to be able to ask you, how are you? Without you being frightened that I'm going to do something to you. Sister, come over this way. Sister. Oh, sister, I'm so glad to see you. It at once gives you a place in my family. Although we are only 4 or 5, yet still, so that When I came to Hillside the first time, I knew that I was coming into a family. And I'm grateful for that. And I was here for the wedding. And I was here as a family member. And I'm here now, full-fledged out. I'm a family member at Hillside. You know, the rainbow in the clouds might look like something we don't want to mention in public. Sometimes the rainbow in the clouds may be obese or may be very, very skinny. May, in fact, need some serious dental work. The rainbow in your cloud may, in fact, kick English to the curb. But people live in direct relation to the heroes and sheroes they have, always and in all ways. And the rainbow in the cloud is a hero shero. We have to know that and honor them in that way. So, when I was 3 and my brother 5, my mother and father separated in California and then divorced. Now I know there are people who say, oh, what a shame. Well, sometimes divorce is tragic, but we ought to get a grip. Some people ought to be divorced. That's the truth. My mother and father did my nation a favor by getting divorced. They put me and Bailey, my brother, on a train and had us travel from Los Angeles, California, to an area in Stamps, Arkansas, in the state of Arkansas, about the size of this part of the sanctuary, about this part. My grandmother, my father's mother, who took us in, and her other son, my Uncle Willie, had the only black-owned store in the town. So, Mama was old when we arrived. She must have been 50. And my Uncle Willie was crippled, so his whole right side was paralyzed. Mama thought he had fallen off a porch when he was 18 months, and she thought because of that he was crippled. We found out he had some neurological malady, like polio or something like that, which caused his paralysis. But they needed me and Bailey to work in the store. So I think my grandmother taught us to read and write that afternoon when we arrived. But Uncle Willie taught us to do our times tables. And he used to grab me with his good hand like that and stand me in front of a pot-bellied stove, Bailey too. And he'd start to say, now sister, do your 4s. Sister, do your 6s. Sister, do your 9s. I learned my multiplication tables exquisitely. I was so sure if I didn't, somehow he would manage, I don't know how, to open that stove and throw me in it. Of course, I found he was so tender-hearted, he wouldn't allow a moth or a fly to be killed in the store. Bailey and I had to hunt the little offender down, catch it, and take it outside where Uncle Willie thought we let it go. He thought so. But, I stayed with my Uncle Willie and my grandmother until I was 7. At 7, we were taken up to St. Louis, to my mother's people. My mother had returned from California, and she was living in St. Louis with her mother and her people. We were picked up, my brother and I, and taken there without any preparation for her. She let us in and helped us to try to become city kids. She cut off my hair and put it in a bob and straightened it. I was 7. We were overthrown by the family. They were so erudite, so sophisticated. I mean, they spoke like this. They even they put ers into words, like learns. You have learns yet, and they even called baloney Bologna. I mean, they were up there. I'm sorry to say, after 2 months, my mother's boyfriend raped me. And I told the family, because of Bailey, I told them. And he was put in jail for 1 day and 1 night and released. And Bailey and I were on the floor of my mother's parlor. We were playing a game, we called it Monopoly, because we never heard it pronounced. So, two policemen came in, huge police, huge. They came and they were white, and they wore blue serge. And at that time, blue serge was a ½ an inch thick, and they had big brass buttons. They looked like giants. So they told my mother's mother, my grandmother too, that the man had been found dead, and it seemed he had been kicked to death. I thought that my voice had killed him. The statement so traumatized me that I stopped speaking. Stopped, would not. I knew the only person I could speak to would be my brother Bailey, because he loved me so much, and I loved him so much. Nothing could happen to him. Well, I'm sorry to say my brother died a few years ago, and he was living with me in North Carolina. And I was giving an interview, and someone asked me about that. And I said, only Bailey. I only spoke to Bailey. And he said, yes, but I never told her, but most of the time I didn't understand what she said. But I stopped speaking. And my brother told me, it's all right. You can stop speaking. You don't have to speak. You're the smartest person around here. You're smarter than almost everybody. Except me, I'm smarter than you. I believed him. I didn't speak for almost 7 years. I went back, my mother's people tried to woo me away from my mutism, that I would not go. They didn't know that my voice could kill people, just indiscriminately. So after a few months, they wearied at the presence of this sullen, silent child. So they sent me back to Mama in stamps, my rainbow in the clouds. Mama would braid my hair the same way old black ladies still braid girls' hair. I would sit on a pillow on the floor. Mama would sit down, pull her dress way down between her legs like that. I would get back. And my hair was huge and very, very curly. And some people call it kinky. That puts me down. I will not. The nap. Only rugs have naps. No. When you take a person who is white or Asian and you look at that hair under a microscope, and it's mostly flat, with maybe a couple of curls, but mostly flat. Put an African hair under you'll see it's flat and curved, flat and curved, flat, and that accounts for what is really curly. So watch your mouth, because what you're saying is you're talking about yourself, and you're putting yourself down. So never do that, and don't allow anybody else to do it with your permission. No, not. So, Mama would braid my, first she'd get this brush, and she'd bend her hand like that, and put it behind my neck, so she wouldn't break my neck by accident. And she'd start to brush. She said, "Sister, Mama don't care what these people say about you, that you must be a moron or you must be an idiot because you can't talk. Sister, Mama don't care. Mama know when you and the good Lord get ready, sister, you're going to be a teacher. Sister, you're going to teach all over this world." I used to sit there and think, this poor ignorant mama, didn't she know I will never speak? It is my blessing today to say I have some 60 doctorates. It is my blessing. It is my blessing to tell you that I'm a Chubb Fellow at Yale, and I'm on the board at Harvard. And I speak. I get around in 6 or 7 languages. I teach French and Spanish and philosophy. Now, if I hadn't started with when it looked like the sun wasn't going to shine anymore, you might have thought, oh, she's bragging. I'm bragging on the rainbows in my cloud. Without them, I would be just another black girl barefoot in the dirt roads of Arkansas. Instead, all along I've had those rainbows. And so I thank God for them. And when I see one, I not only thank God for her or him, I praise her and him. Whenever I see, here's a rainbow in somebody's cloud. Now it is possible for each of us to be rainbows. It is possible. Somebody is looking at you. They may not know enough about you, but say, hey, she's got a pretty green dress on today. Yes, she does. Got those good shoes, too. Got them on, yeah. Somebody is looking, and somebody needs somebody to say, morning. Yes. You don't know what that man just hung up the phone from a nurse who said, I'm sorry, Mr. Jones, you're going to have to come back in. The x-rays didn't please us. Or that woman who hung up the phone from somebody telling her, we're downsizing, and I'm sorry, but you're going to have to come into the office and get your belongings. And to have just somebody say good morning, and the people, if they don't look like you, if they happen to be white or Asian, say, look, who is that? Other people say, is she in my church? Does she belong to my church? But for a moment, you've lifted somebody. For a moment. This is the blessing of being a rainbow in somebody's cloud. And I know that the Christian, the person who is practicing to be a Christian, I'm always amazed when people walk up to me and say, I'm a Christian. I think, already? I've been working at it so long and so hard. I've been working at it. And when I finish the day and get down on my knees and say, Lord, thank you, I think, I only blew it 84 times today. Well, I ask for forgiveness, and I forgive myself, and I hope to make it 83 or less tomorrow. But those who are practicing Christianity are like those who are practicing Buddhism or Islam, or those who are practicing Sanskrit or Confucianism, Shintoism, are not there yet, But you can see a person on the road to there, and you know that it's all right. You can be in that person's company. She's not going to embarrass you. If you're in among strangers and you see somebody who is practicing to be a Christian, it's okay. He's not going to let anybody insult you, even as a stranger. Somebody will take up for you. And that's the road that you travel as a Christian. To bless everybody you can possibly see. Everybody. Bless them. So, in the interim, from the time I was 13, I have started to study. And I remain studying. I'm a student. I know that my next birthday, next April, I'll be celebrating my 80th. Practicing, studying. So when I thought about Hillside and thought about Dr. King and what she represents, I think of Ida Cooper, who said, "All my people go with me when and where I enter." And I would like young people to think of that. As long as you're black, all your people come with you. They do, whether you know it or not, whether they ask your permission or not. Because you're just one of them, not of us. I'll tell this one story, true. Years ago, I had a television series. I wrote it for PBS. And it was African culture's impact on the West. And in one, I just used African, it was 10 one-hour programs. One just African art and its impact on the West. I did it out of San Francisco. And so I was told that over at Berkeley, there was a man who had a huge collection of Makonde sculpture, and I might be able to borrow some, which I did for my series. And the people were so pleased with the way I handled it, and the lighting on it and all that, that they gave me a little piece of Makonde sculpture. And I then went on back to New York. A few years later, I moved to Berkeley, and I called this man. I said, "I wanted to thank you again for the use of your sculpture, and I'm moving out here." And he said, "We read in the paper that you were moving, Dr. Angelou, and we're so glad." I said, "Well, I need friends, so maybe you'll invite me to your home, and I'll invite you to mine, and we get to see each other." He said, "Absolutely." He said, "You don't know what I've been doing since last we met." I said, "No." He said, "Well, I'm the head of the National Council of Christians and Jews there in San Francisco. And he said, I've been going over to Germany trying to ameliorate the condition of the American soldiers over there." He said, "The black soldiers are having it very hard." He said, "Even our own guys are having it bad." So I asked him, "Would you say that again?" He said, "Well, I'm saying that the black guys are really having it bad, but our guys are having it bad too." I asked him to say it again. About the fourth time, he said, "Oh my God, I've said that, and I'm talking to Maya Angelou." He said, "I'm so embarrassed, I want to hang up." I said, "Please don't. Please don't. I know you to mean to be a good human being. I know that. Please don't hang up. Let us talk about the insidious nature of racism. That you can go to sleep, and while you're asleep, it will crawl in through the keyhole and attach itself to your body. That's ignorance. That's what it will do. So please don't." He would not, he did hang up, and he wouldn't accept my phone calls. So I never got a chance to meet his family, which meant that I, my family, and friends were lessened by not getting to know him, his family and friends. You understand? And his family and friends were lessened by not getting to know me. Well, so the years passed, and one of the churches, which has Trinity, the Episcopalian, do a Trinity lecture every 5 years. Usually they get Archbishop Tutu, Archbishop of Canterbury, Archbishop of so and so. But this time they got Fred Buechner, who was an Episcopalian priester, and me. So we went all over the country, and we stopped in San Francisco, and I told the story. This very story I've told you, I didn't think about it where I was. I didn't use his name. And in the body of the church of Trinity Cathedral in San Francisco, this man stood up with that plastic, like a tablecloth thing, you know, in the mitre. The bishop, he stood up in the middle of the pews and said, "She is telling the truth. I am he." And he came out of that, and I came off the stage, and we met in the middle aisle. And he was weeping, and so was I. He said, "Let me go to the microphone, please." He came to the microphone. He said, "It is true. I said that the black soldiers were their soldiers, were themselves. They didn't belong to us. But that the white soldiers were ours. I made the mistake. And I am Bishop Trevor Hoy." I had never told his name, but this so happened that it gave me a backup for what I wanted to say about racism and ignorance of any kind. It will attach itself to you. You think, "Oh, I got rid of that. I prayed all night, and I prayed, and I've been going to church and reading my Bible and talking to religious people, and I'm okay." And the next thing, somebody drops a knife or a fork on your foot and say, "Oh." It's true. So you have to continue to screw the bulb in. Continue to keep the lampshade right. Continue to make sure that your light lifts up somebody. And in your family, that's why I talked about family. In your family, there is somebody, a hero, shero, in the family. You may never have gotten to know him or her. Maybe you only know about stories about her or him. You may have to go back an entire generation. But there is somebody who you can name as your hero. Now, to show you how generous I am, I'm going to give you my grandma, Mrs. Annie Henderson. She died 57 years ago. I'm giving her to you. If you want to think about somebody, until you find somebody in your very own family, and then in your very own church where you already have somebody. In your very own place of worship where you have somebody. Some place where you can just come and sit and be quiet. You have somebody. So my prayer to you, my hope to you, is that you remember the song when it looked like the sun wasn't going to shine anymore. God put a rainbow in the clouds. After I had written and delivered the poem I wrote for Mr. Clinton's inauguration, United Nations got in touch with me and asked if I would write a poem for the 50th anniversary of United Nations. I wept copiously. I couldn't hardly stop crying. out of gratitude to all the rainbows. I couldn't stop because when I was 16, I was in San Francisco. The United Nations was being founded. I read in the newspapers that simultaneous translators were going to be paid $150 a week. I never heard of that much money. Never heard of that much money. And I knew I had a penchant, I have a gift for languages because of all those years I was a mute. And I've learned to listen. I used to think of my whole body as an ear, that I could go into a room and absorb all sound. So that's why I've been able to learn languages with some alacrity. Well, I would go down to United Nations and I'd see Mrs. Eleanor Roosevelt walk in with her friend, the black educator, Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune. And I would just cry, thinking if I wasn't black, I didn't tell you, I was 6 foot tall, 16 years old, black, even then, and pregnant and unmarried. I used to stand there and watch these women go in. I think, if I wasn't black and 6 foot tall and pregnant and 16 and uneducated, I could go in those buildings. Can you imagine what it meant to me to be asked to come back to United Nations and say a poem myself? So, I'm going to say this poem and I'm going to give it to your rainbow for her 36th year in this endeavor. And one copy will be put on your website for every member of Hillside to have a copy. We, this people, on this small and lonely planet, traveling through casual space, past aloof stars, across the way of indifferent suns, to a destination where all signs tell us it is possible and imperative that we learn a brave and startling truth. And when we come to it, to the day of peacemaking, when we release our fingers from fists of hostility, when the curtain falls on the minstrel show of hate, and faces sooted with scorn are scrubbed clean, when battlefields and coliseum no longer rake our unique and particular sons and daughters up from the bruised and bloody grass to lay them in identical plots in foreign soil. When we come to it, when the rapacious storming of the churches, the screaming racket in the temples have ceased. When we let the rifles fall from our shoulders and our children can dress their dolls in flags of truce. When landmines of death have been removed and the aged can walk into their evenings of peace. When incense of burning flesh and childhood dreams are not kicked awake by nightmares of sexual abuse. When we come to it, then we will confess that not the pyramids with their stones set in mysterious perfection, nor the Garden of Babylon hanging as eternal beauty in our collective memory, not the Grand Canyon with their delicious color stemmed and encouraged by western sunsets, nor the Danube flowing its blue soul into Europe, not the sacred peak of Mount Fuji stretching to the rising sun, neither Father Amazon nor Mother Mississippi, who without favor nurture all creatures in their depths and on their shores. Those are not the only wonders of the world. When we come to it, we, this people, on this minuscule globe, who reach daily for the bomb, the blade, the dagger, yet who petition in the dark for tokens of peace. We, this people, on this mote of matter, in whose mouths abide cankerous words which threaten our very existence. Yet out of those same mouths can come songs of such exquisite sweetness that the heart falters in its labor, and the body is quieted into awe. We, this people, on this floating mere planet whose hands can strike with such abandon that in a twinkling life is sapped from the living, yet those same hands can touch with such healing, irresistible tenderness that the haughty neck is happy to bow and the proud back is glad to bend. Out of such chaos we learn we are neither devils nor divines. When we come to it, we, this people on this wayward floating body, created on this earth, of this earth, have the power to fashion for this earth a climate where every man and every woman can live freely without sanctimonious piety and without crippling fear. When we come to it, we must confess that we are the possible. We are the probable. We are the true miracle, the true wonder on this earth. That is when, and only when it looked like the sun wasn't gonna shine anymore. When we, each of us, decides I am blessed to be a rainbow in somebody's cloud. Thank you.
Books by Reverend Dr. Barbara King and other New Thought writers, along with Hillside's own daily devotional guide, Daily Thoughts from the Hill, are all available at Truth and Treasures, the Hillside Bookstore, 2450 Cascade Road in Southwest Atlanta. For store hours, directions, or more information, call 404-758-6811 or visit our website at www.hillsidechapel.org. Thank you for watching, and as we say to all of our friends, we love you, we bless you, we appreciate you, and we thank God for you.